everyone. Today we're going to be working on solving these problems with the Pythagorean theorem. And I know I went over the first one in class, but I'll do it quickly again. Remember that each side is 90 feet, and we're trying to solve for this distance across, throwing from third to first base. So we're going to call that C because that's the hypotenuse. So we're going to take 90 squared plus 90 squared, and that's going to equal C squared. So 90 squared is 8100 plus then another 8100 equals C squared. I add those two together because I'm going to solve the equation. So I get 16,200 equals C squared. Now I'm going to take the square root of each side because I don't want to know what C squared is. I want to know what C is. So when I do that, I get 127.28. So they're going to throw 127.28 feet from third to first base. On the second one, we're solving for the diagonal. So diagonal is the distance across the picture. And so that's the hypotenuse again, so it's C. So if we label this, we know that this side is going to be 9, this side is going to be 12. So that means that the 9 is the A and the 12 is the B. So I'm going to take 9 squared plus 12 squared equals C squared. And 9 squared is 81. 12 squared is 144. When I add those two together, I get a total of 225. When I take the square root of that, I find out that C equals 15. On to problem 3. Again, here we're looking for diagonal. If the player is going from corner to corner and returning the run, this side being 100, this side being 53 feet, so we're solving for C here. So I'm going to take 100 squared plus 53 squared, because those are A and our B, and that's going to equal C squared. Apologize for my bad writing here. So when I square 100, I am going to get 10,000 plus 53 squared is 2,890 equals C squared. When I add those two together, I get 12,809 equals C squared. Again, I'm going to square root to solve for C. And I find out that C equals 113.18. So that's how many yards they have to run diagonally across the field. Then in the next picture, so you're raising this banner and it says that the guy wire is 10 feet from the edge across the ground and 10 feet off the ground. So we're going to be solving for the C over here. And a guy wire is just a wire that holds something up, in case you were wondering. So we have A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Well, 10 squared is 100. Same thing again. 10 squared plus 10 squared is 200. I take the square root, and the square root of 200 is 14.14 feet. On to number 5. On number 5, I know that this one tricked a lot of people, but it's talking about from home plate to the bait or the pitcher's mound is 43 feet. So that also means, because this is a square, that the distance from the pitcher's mound to first base is also going to be 43 feet. So those are the A and the B, so we're going to solve for C. So I'm going to take 43 squared plus 43 squared equals C squared. And 43 squared is 1,849 equals C squared. I'm going to add those two together, and I get 3,698 equals C squared. So to solve, I'm going to take the square root, and C will equal 60.81. Now for number 6. On number 6, it says that this diagonal is 10 centimeters. So, with that being 10 centimeters, that's the C. Now we have to solve for A and B. So this is going to be A, this is going to be B. But one thing we know about a square is that every side is equal to the other. So it's the same as having two A's or two B's. So I'm going to say that I have an A squared. And I'm going to call this not B, but I'm going to call it another A. Just because both sides are the same and I don't know either are. So I'm going to say I have two A squareds equal the C squared, and the C is 10. So I square that. So now I have to solve this equation. It's a little different than the ones that we've been doing, just because we only know the hypotenuse. So now I take 10 squared, which is 100. Now when I solve this equation, the next step is going to be to divide by 2 on both sides. So now I have A squared equals 50. So to solve that, I'm going to take the square root of 50 and find out that A is going to equal 7.1 centimeters. For number 7, this one can be tricky at times depending on how you're looking at it, but you're asked for the perimeter around the shape. So that means the distance all the way around. Okay, so that means we have to solve for a side. Well, when we solve for that side, we can look at that diagonal across that black square, because that line is going to go from one side of the square to the other, so it is still going to be the edge of the square. So that means that is going to be considered C. So we know A and we know B. A is 8, so we're going to square it. B is also 8, we're going to square it. It's going to equal C squared. 8 squared is 64. And 64 plus 64 is 128. So now I'm going to take the square root. And the square root of 128 is going to be 11.31 equals C. So that's just one side of this though. So 11.31. So that means this side is also 11.31 and so on. So that means there's 4 sides with 11.31. So I can either add that up 4 times, or I can just say I'm going to multiply it by 4. And when I multiply it by 4, I find out that the perimeter, distance all the way around, is going to be 45.24 feet. Or inches, I'm sorry. All right, for number 8. This one gave a lot of people trouble because there wasn't a number written in number form, it was written in word form. So this is an equilateral triangle, and one thing about an equilateral triangle means that every side is exactly alike. And it also tells me that every side is 1. So if every side is 1, but I'm solving for this dotted line down the middle, we're going to call it B. So the distance from here to here is 1. But since we're talking about this B, I got to look at just one side of this right triangle, or this equilateral triangle, which it forms the right triangle in order to solve. So if I'm looking at just one side, I'm not going from here to here, edge to edge. I'm only going halfway through. So that means that this A is only going to be 0.5. So I'm going to say 0.5 squared plus, I don't know my B, so I'm going to say plus B squared, equals 1 squared, because the hypotenuse right now is 1. So 0.5 squared is 0.25 plus b squared equals 1 squared is 1. So to solve this equation, I have to subtract 0.25, or 25 hundredths, from each side. So I have b squared equals 0.75. To solve, I take the square root. So b will equal 0.87. And that's my solution for that one. On number 9. Now, the most difficult part I thought for this one was that people were not paying attention to which side was which. So let's label it carefully. So a kite is tethered 500 feet on 500 feet of string. That means that this string is 500 feet. A girl is directly under the kite and stands 400 feet away from the person flying the kite. So that means from here to here is 400 feet. So then it asks, how high is the kite? So that means here. So we're going to call that B. So our equation is going to be 400 squared plus B squared equals 500 squared, because the hypotenuse is 500. So when I square 400, I get 160,000. Now we're dealing with some big numbers. Plus b squared equals 500 squared, being 250,000. Uh-oh. Apologize for that. Equals 250,000. So now I'm going to subtract 160,000 from both sides. So that becomes 0. So now it's with b squared equals 90,000. So to solve for b, I'm going to take the square root. And b is going to equal 300. All right, last but not least, you have a 300-foot wide playing field surrounded by a sidewalk. How much distance will you save if you take the shortcut diagonally across the field rather than walking the sidewalk? Well, we know every side to the sidewalk is 300 feet. So if I take the sidewalk, if I'm going from this point to this point, that's going to be the 300 and 300. So I'm going to add 300 plus 300, which we know is 600. So that's if I take the sidewalk. So now if I want to solve for the diagonal shortcut, I'm going to make that c, because that's the hypotenuse. So now I'm going to say 300 squared plus 300 squared equals c squared. Well, 300 squared is pretty big. It's 90,000. So now I have 90,000 plus 90,000 equals c squared. Well, 90,000 plus 90,000 is 180,000. And it equals c squared. So my final step with this part of it is to take the square root, and square root of 180,000 is 424.26. Now, that's the distance taking the shortcut diagonally across the field. So if I take the 600 that it would be for the sidewalk, because it's asking how much will you save by going diagonally, you're going to take that 600 and you're going to subtract 424.26 to get your final answer of 175.74 feet. It's actually quite a bit of steps. So that one is a little bit more involved, but A lot of it's common sense on what do I put together. I hope that you did well, and I hope that this helped you out. Have a great day.